star this season. Tonight, he showed the world what he could do.
My God, a freshman.
An extra gear for the freshman. Touchdown. And the freshman is off. Foot race. They're looking at shoe bottoms and nothing else. Into the end zone. Touchdown. The freshman just ran it back to Philadelphia.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Future Freshmen podcast. Welcome to episode 5. We're trucking right along here, and it's great that we get to see all the people that are downloading and listening to, whether you're on the C2C feed or you're listening through Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. We just made it to Amazon Music, so shout out to those at Amazon that are listening. We appreciate you guys. Once again, super humbled that you guys are listening in. You guys are really digging this freshman content. And honestly, the guy that I'm bringing on today is one of those guys that planted that seed early on, and the guy that we talked about. And of course, this man is the 2005 U Sports CFF national champion. He's an OG. He is the ace hole, and he's also the hitman, Mitch the Hitman Hardt. How are we doing today, buddy?
Every day's a great day to be Mitch, babe. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and it certainly is a great day when you're Mitch. You can find Mitch at Twitter. He's at Ace Holes Rule. Yeah, of course, he's the ace hole. Cool fact for everyone that is listening or watching. Me and Mitch sat here, and the Future Freshman podcast was originally, there as well. But the man that I give credit to that gave me the big fish, small pond was this man right here, Mitch Hardt. Mitch, tell him about what you used to do on radio and how you talked it up and stuff like that, and just how big fish, small pond is now living through the Future Freshman podcast. But just tell us a little bit of that before we kind of move on to some housekeeping.
I tell you, Brandon, when you say a 2005 national champion, it just makes me feel even older than I am, man. That was 100 years ago.
You're the man.
There you go. Okay, so I had a fantasy sports show 100 years ago, and I actually began my radio, and it was on the radio. So there was no podcasting. I didn't even know what a podcast was in 2005. But one of the things that I shared with listeners, because I was in Southeast Texas, and our closest major program was U of H. And U of H is just it was at a time too where it just wasn't a huge program. Right. And when we started talking about U of H and Rice, and we would get a recruit, a 3-star type recruit in that area back then, or when U of H got a 4-star recruit, I started sharing with people how important it is when that one big fish comes to our little small pond and how much of a difference it can make. And what I started to do is I started to do research on kids that were getting good Rivals rankings, good 24/7 rankings, that were going to non-traditional schools. And I'm not even to say not like even Power 5, but say a kid was going, instead of going to USC, he was going to CU. So you knew that his path would be clear. Instead of someone going to Michigan State, they were going to Central Michigan. So you'd be like, man, Antonio Brown 100 years ago. I remember Antonio Brown. I remember talking about him as a freshman. Kid was dynamite and electric, but just had some issues, and you could tell he has some issues. He had some issues and just didn't get to the big school, but the guy was great. So I love taking those, and now the recruiting lists are great. The work that you guys are doing on campus to Canton is great. You can see where these guys are going, and we may even bring up a couple of today. Big fish, small pond. Very good to go fishing in those ponds for your fantasy greatness.
I absolutely agree. So there's the hype right there for the big fish, small pond. Also, a guy that we're going to talk about in the first segment is a guy that kind of reminds me a lot of an Antonio Brown, minus the quote-unquote issues. So we'll see how that goes. A little housekeeping before we get started. One, I want to thank his name is Sick Edits HD for collaborating with the brand new intro. You actually will see that at the start of this one coming up when it goes live here on the YouTube show, and you'll hear some of it on the actual podcast itself. So shout out to him. Thank you for the video. He does amazing hype videos and stuff for the NCAA. So if you're big on just watching cool highlights on individual players or teams, he's a really good guy to kind of check out. So it's Sick Edits with the Z HD on YouTube. Please go check him out as well. Like I said, just get hyped. He's got some good ones. You'll be ready for the NCAA. You'll be ready for spring games for sure. If you haven't heard already, the team has put out a brand new freshman and supplemental guide for anyone that is playing in C2C this year. It is fantastic. Mitch, if you want to speak on it for just like a minute or so, you're a guy that just moved up to the NIL subscriber thing. So tell them how you like it from a consumer, point of view.
Yeah, I do not pay for a lot of content because I find myself able to find good tidbits. What I just pay for a couple, and this is one of them. The guide breaks it down. It breaks down almost every freshman you're gonna need to know on this freshman supplemental guide, and it does it in a very personal level. And what I mean by that is we can almost all find out how fast a kid runs. If you type in top end speed of Jovantae Barnes, it's going to say that he's at 24.48. It's like two things down. But what this does is it's a person's perspective on how Jovantae runs, how he looks, how fluid he is. And it gives you some insight of maybe, sometimes you just want to hear that one thing about a player where you're like, oh, that kid did this. And I'm going to drop a little tidbit in a minute about one of the folks that we do. When I hear something special and you read that, then I think, man, that guy's going to be a very good athlete. It's excellent. It's definitely worth the money. And if you want to be competitive today, you're going to need to keep up with all the information you can.
Absolutely. Thank you, one, for getting it, but two, for giving us honest feedback. And, you guys heard it here first as well. I just want to point out that the guide itself is only $20, but if you move up to the NIL, which is $50, I know it's $50, but it's not just this freshman supplemental guide. The Devy guide's dropping for those that are playing Devy. And if you didn't hear the announcement, there is a CFF guide that's going to come. We're trying to do it early July, so maybe a Independence Day-ish type situation. Can't quote the say, but early July is what we're looking at. If you got the $50 subscription, it automatically just gets sent right to your email. So then, boom, you can click it. You have all the information you need. Boom, we're getting ready to jump into CFF drafts, whether you're playing redraft, you're doing keeper leagues, which me and Mitchell will talk about eventually. But and then, of course, we got Dynasty, and this is what this, and we'll bring it back around. This is what this podcast is about. It's getting you ready for your freshman drafts, or if you got some supplemental, knowing the value, but knowing what to expect from these guys when you're doing it as well. One more thing, of course, you see it on the lower bottom there, is that we still have the Prize Picks thing going on. You can use the code CFFU to get the matching deposit up to $100. Once again, I know I keep saying every week, but building your bankroll. So we got March Madness going on. My Tar Heels beat Baylor. That's great. I mean, it ruined my bracket, but I'll take that bracket loss because we need it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're coming together, right? But you can, do some prize props, whether it's going to be on fantasy points. You can do it on rebounds, points, assists, things like that. There's all different kinds of ways that you do it. So build that bankroll up. I'm playing a little bit DFS there for Dynasty. I'm trying to do like Babcock and a few other Tar Heels, jumping them in and stuff like that, winning a few dollars here and there. I'm also trying to, work my way and get some of that bankroll up, because CFF, I'll be sliding in some DMs as far as like Kevin Mountain, those that I trust in the CFF world when it comes to DFS. So I'm just trying to build that bankroll, but we can do it now, whether you're doing NASCAR or golf. It doesn't matter what you're into. There's sports to be had, and there's plenty of things you can do. So please check out Prize Picks, great app. CFFU is the actual code that you could do. All right, enough of the housekeeping, Mitch. It's time for the main event. Are you ready for segment one, good sir?
Indeed.
Let's talk about someone from Texas A&M, and that is Mr. Evan Stewart. The man is a 5-star prospect, very high star. He is the second overall wide receiver in the 22 class. The man has a composite grade from 24/7 of 0.9940. That is not too far away from 100%, and we'll get into why we think he's so high up the board. Let's look at his height. It's at 6 foot, 175 pounds. I believe he is already on the way past 175 pounds. I haven't read too many things. All I know is he's exploding in camp, and that's all I love to hear as well. So, we were talking before we actually hit record, but Mitch, he did sit out his senior year, kind of a opting out, not so much an injury thing, but more of an NIL, whereas like A&M's like, right, you're a high 5-star. We want you. You probably have playing time immediately. We need someone that's going to stretch the field, take this money, sit out, and do it. So kind of like a Quinn Ewers situation, kind of like he jumped from high school to Ohio State so he can at least have the money. This time it's more Evan Stewart was offered to relax, get in shape, get ready for camp, basically. So, it sounds like he had a really good off season. The kid's coming in hot. Before, we jump into, what we see and things like that, let's look at some of the comparisons. So his NFL comparison is Devontae Smith. So anything that we learned from Alabama and how explosive down the field that Devontae Smith was with Tua, we have a similar situation. The question is going to become, do we have Haynes King all season? Do we see the emergence of Connor Wyman? So there's some questions at quarterback, and we'll talk about that, in just a few minutes. So let's look at why Evan Stewart is a 5-star prospect, and we'll kind of jump into that. So he's adequate size, super high athletic build. The man jumps off the thing. He's a track and field guy. So a lot of this, Texas A&M just knows how to find football players and track people. So A-Chain, for example, he's not even in camp because he's playing track and field right now for A&M. But
he's running track.
Correct. Yes, he is running track and probably running records just like that. I think the kid was almost an Olympian, if I'm not mistaken. So A-Chain is doing his thing. Now we see an Evan Stewart, who I don't know if I think he's solely on football, so he has kind of given that up. But the quick elite status on there as well. It's natural when it comes to that one as well. No one can stop the kid. He's killing cornerbacks, and this is in the SEC type one. We're not talking ACC as much as I love my league and stuff like that. Their corners are nothing compared to what the SEC, which they produce round 1, round 2, round 3, like NFL starting corners, right? The kid is already burning half the people that's on his team at playing corner there at Texas A&M, Mitch.
Indeed.
So, the kid's twitchy. He gets off the lane. He's a literal burner. He just flashes. The kid is nonstop. I would call him the Flash. I'd probably be like one of my nicknames that I'd probably call the man. The guy is projected to be an early round NFL. So when I see that, I'm not saying that he'll have an end kind of like we saw with, I call him Hollywood Brown, but Marquise Brown and stuff like that. But there's these burner kids that are just killing the game when it comes to football. And we're talking reports now in spring that he's absolutely destroying it. He's playing with the ones. So here's where I'll start the conversation, and then we can kind of talk about the quarterback situation, Mitch.
Okay.
Jimbo Fisher will drive a freshman to the bench immediately. Like, the man usually does not like to play his freshman. You have to earn it. I think Haynes King was a different scenario type situation. I believe he actually had to sit a little bit before he even started this past year before he got injured. But the kid seems like he's too good to stay off the field. And I get it that, and we'll talk about it here in a second, we have, some people behind him. One has been suspended indefinitely, so that's one less person he's got to worry about. But he does he has another freshman who's right behind him as the third wide receiver in the 22 class. However, the difference between him and a Chris Marshall, who's a 6'3", 195 guy, is Stewart is the long projected one. He's the one that the bombs are going to go to. So are we going to see both him and Marshall year one? Are we suspected to see Anais Smith, who I see as a gadget guy? What are your thoughts on Texas A&M, and what do you think about a freshman starting in Jimbo's system, man?
Okay. First, let's cover this and get it out of the way. Jimbo Fisher has been a coach under different circumstances than he is today. The landscape is different, and you can't sit kids that way anymore. He sees that. He sees that with the kids that have come to his school. He sees that with the kids that have left. I'm not worried about the history of a way a guy coached because NIL has changed everything. So don't get suckered in. And I'll give Jimbo too much due with this comparison. But remember when Coach K was all about his kids staying forever? And then he turned into a one-and-done guy, and it was a couple of the better teams that Duke ever had, and that's saying a lot. So I think he changed. Jimbo's going to change. I'm not worried about that at all. What I kind of see as the fly in this ointment is, are they going to run plays that set this kid up? And here's what I mean. I hear you with all of the track stuff. One of the things, if you ever want to look up who is the best athlete, go to the triple jump in a track meet. That's where the kids are. And the kid took second in 5A in the triple jump. He won the long jump. So his athleticism is great. But what I see isn't that long bomb that's in every offense. He beats people off the line. He is outstanding off the line of scrimmage. But what that means is you have to run plays that are just a beat faster than a bubble screen, because by the time you faked and thrown over there, this kid's already made his move. So while I'm sure he can beat people deep, he's wide open very quickly. And I'm just curious because A&M hasn't had that guy in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimbo hasn't had that wide receiver in my memory. I look back to a couple of Jameis's teams in Florida State. It's not that way. So he has a weapon, unlike one that he hasn't used. Yeah, well, I'm definitely not going to say ever, but it's been a while. Yeah. So the bad for me, his quarterback situation is fluid. We don't know which guy is going to win the job. But worse than that, what happens is you don't get to build a rapport with your QB. As a young wide receiver, you would definitely love it if any of those guys were the guy. I do want to remind everybody, Haynes King was supposed to be really good and broke his ankle, and we don't know if he is good or not. We just don't.
We're going to find out, right?
Yeah, let's just hold tight. I believe that Haynes will get the job. I do believe that he throws well enough to make Stewart a factor. And I think he could be the best out of all these guys. And you do have on your graphic there that Demas has been suspended indefinitely. And I'm sure he'll be back on the team, but not getting reps this whole time really hurts him. So, Stewart's been running with the ones all through spring practice. I like to hear that. I actually think this kid can be a fantasy pickup in most leagues factor this year. Maybe once he, breaks in and starts those first few games where they're going to play sissy competition, he may get a by the way touchdown. And I think he'll be on the radar early on people. I like this kid a lot.
Yeah. And I was going to, kind of jump in. When it comes to Dynasty, we all know, like, you're going to have to take this kid in the first round if you're doing a freshman draft just because of the pedigree where he sits and now the opportunity now, his stock is just going to rise completely. But in redraft, it sounds like he's still going to be someone that's going to be a waiver wire darling, we like to call it. I don't know if he's being drafted. I don't know. By the time we get to July or August, there might be enough rumblings to where they're the kid's starting in the lineup. So let's take him in late rounds of a CFF draft. So it might get to that point. I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying the waiver wire priority is going to be top dollar probably for this kid. And he's one of those guys that you can play into flex to start. And then he could even be a wide receiver 2 or solid wide receiver 3, depending on how many wide receivers you have in the lineup.
In the Debbie look and, C2C, and all of those C2C stuff. Mm-hmm. I actually don't have him as Devontae Smith. I have him as a slightly smaller Jerry Jeudy. He has very dead-legged right leg juke. It seemed to me on video it was his best juke is when he's on the right side of the field with his outside leg he plants and goes in, very Jerry Jeudy-like. And what I keep reading that I like already is his route running. They just keep talking about his routes, and that's more Jerry Jeudy than Devonta Smith.
I agree.
It's just he's skinny and small like Devonta Smith, but he doesn't play like Devonta. He plays to me like Jerry Jeudy. And I mean, they're both great. I'm not, but still, I mean, if I love comps and I don't like being loose on my comps. So anyway, I'm going Jerry Jeudy for his.
I love Jerry Jeudy. I'm a Denver guy, so of course I love Jeudy, but I also enjoyed playing him in CFF when we did have him, right? So I mean, the guy was a tactician, so he might have the burst of Devontae. So it sounds like he's a good hybrid almost in a sense, like he's two Bama receivers turned to one basically. Yep. And we'll give a shout out to our guy Matt, big wide receiver guy there on Twitter. 20.9 miles per hour, which is above the 20 miles per hour you want to have. The only thing is the Newtons, it still passes the 6,000 marker, 6,713, but it's a lot lower than what I thought. But I think because it's speed versus mass, and the kid is only 175 pounds, he increases the weight room, but he still keeps the speed, which I think he has. I don't think he loses
Look,
step.
You can see in your picture. Look how small that guy's arms are. He hasn't been bench pressing much. Yeah. But see, he doesn't press coverage. Now, this is with high school kids, not SEC kids.
Right.
But press coverage, he beats with his feet. Mm-hmm. He dances by you, and he has kids looking like Frankenstein. Now, again, it's not going to be that easy in the SEC, but I'm not worried about his skinny arms. He's going to be just fine. And
he'll bulk up where he needs to.
He can run. He's going to be good. This is definitely a good guy to keep on your radar. And if you're in a long-term, C2C league, this is a guy to get.
All right, for CFF, we're talking freshman. Are you taking him in the first? You're going to pass on him? Or are you looking? I mean, different teams are different, but say you have a need at wide receiver. Are you going to pay the top price for the man, or are you going to take another guy maybe in value at in the first round? I know in our dynasty
if there are 12 teams, I don't think he's 12. He's probably 16.
Okay.
So I think he's
overall with quarterbacks and running backs, right?
Yes.
What you're talking about? Okay.
Yes. If we're in a drafting this year's freshman, I do not think he's a first round pick, but I could see you picking him in the second and being just fine.
Yep.
Most lists I have him. I looked up 4 or 5 lists. Most lists he's top 5 wide receiver. So out of 12 things, you got 5 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 5 wide receivers. That puts him in the second round, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I could see him dropping to an early second. However, like I said, it depends on spring. It also depends on when you draft. If these guys are drafting now before, say if you couldn't wait and stuff like that, you might be able to get a value on there as well. By the time we hit, May, June, July, whenever these freshman drafts
all you got to do to boost your draft status is to have 70 yards and a touchdown in the Aggie spring game, and it will solidify him as a first round
he's going to jump up.
Selection. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, what else nicer can we say? Evan Stewart, look for the man. The guy is going to make a difference. It don't matter if it's redraft, Debbie, C2C. The kids, it's skyrocket. The sky's the limit. Pick the kid up if you can. Let's move on to our next guy.
Cool.
And that is the running back, Jovantae Barnes. He is committed to Oklahoma. He is a 6 foot, 190-pound guy. 10th overall running back in the 22 class on there. His sports grade for 24/7 is 0.9535, so very high 4-star. So I had to go find some information. So I went over to Soonersports.com. So he was, of course, the 2021 Under Armour All-American. He was the first team in Nevada in the prep school as well. After rushing for 567 yards and 11 touchdowns in his 6 games. He also rushed for 1,022 yards and 13 touchdowns on 126 carries as a sophomore in 2019. So the kid was all over the place. He averaged 8.1 yards per rush. Not too bad. And then he was Nevada Prep's All-Southern Nevada honorable mention pick. 2020 season was canceled, unfortunately, to COVID, so he lost his season. But he chose the Sooners over Alabama, Florida State, and USC, of course, that was probably before the Riley switch over and stuff like that in particular. So the kid is looking outstanding. Here's the good part. Here's what we're hearing, right? Eric Gray and Marcus Major, they are the incumbent veterans. So they're the ones that are kind of leading there, especially Eric Gray. He's the one that's holding a lot of the running back meetings. We have the legend of DeMarco Murray, who we know from NFL fantasy, of course, played at his alma mater there, Oklahoma, became the Dallas Cowboys starter, and he really kind of made his name in the fantasy world. So now he is their running backs coach. So he's saying that Eric Gray is kind of leading the charge, but him and Major are the guys that are mentoring Barnes. But Barnes is getting a lot of looks and a lot of work. He's actually filing in with Major and Gray when it comes to first team and second team. So here's the situation. We still have Gavin Sawchuck, who's the 7th overall running back in the 22 class. He's got a higher deposit, but not by much. It's 0.9584 versus 0.9535. The difference is Sawchuck is 5'11", 185 pounds. So he seems to be more of the pass catching type situation, whereas Barnes seems to be more of the traditional Oklahoma back. Barnes reminds me more of Kennedy Brooks. I'll be honest. Like if I'm choosing between the two, I like that. But Sawchuck is not in for spring. He does not show up until summer, which does not give him an advantage. Whereas Barnes has already got the playbook. He's understanding what variables is doing. He's got the mentorship already going on with Gray and Major. So I see potential. The kid rumbles, and that's what I like. That's what I saw in the report, that he can drag defenders down. He does not go down on first contact. So this guy is relentless. He looks for the hole, and he's just going to make you pay. So if you get in his way, he's going to truck you. And that's what I like about Jovantae Barnes. The kid is a baller, and that's what I like about it as well. Impressive jump cuts. So the kid's mobile in there as well. He's guaranteed to be a Power 5 starter. He could be all conference, and he can move up stock to NFL running backs, you know what I'm saying? Like, regardless of how good of a season you can have, you can still go in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round in an NFL draft. Fortunately, running backs just get ran into the ground in the NFL, just how the cookie crumbles, right? But as far as someone that can project himself higher, if Barnes gets a hold of this system before Sawchuck, we could see a Barnes 1A and then Sawchuck 1B, or maybe even 2, if we're looking at our running back by committee, which I don't see a lot of Oklahoma, because Brooks kind of just took the ball and ran with it when he could. Eric Gray just kind of fell off.
It's because he's a lot better than Eric Gray, but keep going. I'm listening.
Yes, and we'll talk about it in just a second. So here we are. I didn't get a chance to get the big wide receiver guy analytics before recording, but from what I hear, he's in the 21, 22 miles per hour when it comes to that as well. His Newtons are high because at 6 feet, weight and mass of 190 pounds, and the way that he runs, he's significantly higher. So I think he's over the 7,000s when it comes to the actual Newtons itself. So he's showing all the tangibles as far as analytics. If you look at the tape, it matches the tape as well. And now there's opportunity, and he's already in the system. And I don't know if he ever lets go of that situation. If I were him, I would, eat it up as much as I could and don't even give Sawchuck a chance. Just be like, bro, you got to transfer out. I already got this playbook, So let's talk about it. What are your thoughts on Barnes? What did you see? Your thoughts, and then where do we see him in this lineup this year and next year?
Okay. Well, the best thing for him is his incoming freshman buddy Sawchuck is gone. I do think that they wanted him to be the home run hitter. Sawchuck, I think they saw him as the pass catching back, and that Jovantae was just going to be one of the other guys in the room. What's interesting is because Sawchuck is, not with the team right now and practicing, that they put Barnes in that role. And from what I've read, the more I read, the more pass catching and pass blocking seems to be coming up. And you got to be excited when a young man is as explosive as he is and has that willingness to block. So I really, really like that. What I particularly don't like is that he is a hard-nosed runner, but he doesn't seem to have a lot of wiggle. I'm curious to see what he does when he catches the ball. Those things tend to not mix. So that's sort of a mixed review of, a guy saying, well, he doesn't have a lot of wiggle. He can run over people, but he catches well. I do like the blocking aspect of this. The thing that I also like is Eric Gray and Major aren't that good. And if you ask me, Major's better, and he hasn't done a lot. So it's probably me just liking him. I don't like Eric Gray. Therefore, I actually think the kid might get a shot. Yeah. And new coaching staff, they're not going to want to give him a lot of rain right out of the gate. But if the other two guys falter, they're going to have quick triggers because Gray and Major aren't their guys. So I like the kid. Now, another thing that if we continue to talk about this, your picture on the screen says it again. Look how skinny Jovantae Barnes' arms are.
On this one.
If you look like Trayvon Citizen's arms, they're huge. Well, he weighs 215. The difference in 6 foot tall and 200 pounds and 6 foot tall, 215 is upper body. And why I say that is Jovantae already runs strong. So he has a good lower body already. He can be 215 by October. Now, I don't know if he will, but he could be, because that picture is of a kid that benches 210 pounds, not 310 pounds, which he could if he hits the weight room. So what's interesting is I when I watch him, I like him more as a power back, but he's getting reps in the role as a third down back. Now, that could make it to where he fails, goes to the bench, and we never hear from him again. Or they could coach this kid into being really good. What if they do that? What if DeMarco Murray is right? And he knows a little bit about being a running back. If he's right, this kid could be the starter for Oklahoma next year.
Yep, I agree. I did see where DeMarco said that he's very excited for Sawchuck to enter in the summertime, but I think he's just wanting to get all of his guys in there and just to see what he truly has. I think that's what he meant by it. I don't know if it was more like elation, like, oh, yes, finally get Sawchuck, he's going to be the guy type situation. I don't
think it was.
I think it's more like he's quoted, all four is going to be there.
A lot of times you come in as a right tackle. You're young. You're a right tackle. You're a big kid from Ohio. You go to Notre Dame, you're right tackle, but the left tackle gets injured. You got to slide over there and become a man very fast. Yep. Sometimes it crushes kids. Other times they say, yeah, remember as a freshman when the senior got hurt, he came over and never looked back. This just feels like he could be something. So again, like in the the dynasty drafts and C2C drafts, he should not be slept on. Again, I don't think you're going to get a lot of production, especially early in the season. I just don't see it. Yeah, new coaching staff's not going to put all their eggs in that basket. But later on, definitely. And again, if Eric Gray is the guy and Marcus Major doesn't do anything, Major will just go. He'll transfer to somewhere else and just go because these kids will take his job.
Yeah, Major hasn't done anything. Like he's just been the filler, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like, and then
what's interesting is I like Major. When I watch him, I like him. But he must not practice well.
I just don't know like what doesn't transcend from practice to the field. Like there's just something that's pulling him off the field. And I'll be honest, I mean, Eric Gray was okay at Michigan State. I just wasn't a big guy. Like he was a flex for me at best.
Tennessee, right? Eric Gray.
Tennessee. But even then, like he was like a flex play at some weeks. That's it. You know what I mean?
I made a lot of hay last year with Kennedy Brooks. Everyone drafted Eric Gray in the 5th round, and I got Kennedy Brooks in the 12th.
You got Brooks a lot in the best balls and then redrafts and stuff like that. So like you were first to say, nah, Brooks is the man.
Eric Gray ain't good now. He's not.
I just don't see it.
But again, I bet he gets the ball. I bet they
maybe
try.
First. Yeah.
But that offense, no matter who the coach is, Dylan Gabriel is the best guy on that team. They're going to throw the ball. And, I mean, I'm sure these guys are going to be serviceable, the old guys, Gray and Major. But that's what I'm saying. Like, don't sleep on Jovantae Barnes this year.
No,
it could happen. This is not it's not totally different than Stewart. Stewart's just already in the starting lineup. He's just behind a couple of guys that will get the ball before him. But I would consider Jovantae Barnes clearly a third option when Marcus Major isn't good and Eric Gray isn't good either. You just never know. I like it. It has legs. This kid has a chance to be an early contributor.
Yeah, the kid could go straight to just third down situations or the catching in the guy. He could be the one that starts in the gadget, but it eventually works his way. Like Eric Gray was supposed to be the guy, and the Kennedy Brooks just took it over. You know what I'm saying? Like this could be the same situation, or we could just see Barnes and Sawchuck, and the other two were just like, it was a good run, but these two kids are way better as freshmen than you guys are as junior and seniors. And no offense to them at all. I mean, I'm sure. Like I said, college players, they're kids, but at the same time, like we gotta look at the meat and potatoes when it comes to fantasy because we need the points, right? So if we're going to look at someone that's going to split time to start, I like Barnes over both Sawchuck and Major. Basically, we just got to see what Gray's going to do, basically. So, real quick before we move on, what do you think as far as a freshman draft? We're not looking at a full 2020 production, but 2023 could be the year. Where do you see him dropping as far as the draft? We'll take supplemental out. We'll just talk freshman as far as a freshman draft. What are you thinking?
I think it's very much in line again with this second round kid. Yeah. This kid that if you go much longer, there are factories of fantasy, and the Oklahoman running back is a points factory. It's been that way for a long time. That's why everybody thought Eric Gray would be a plug and play when they already had a kid. So Oklahoma, I know they got a different coaching staff, but we've already been through a couple. Oklahoma has a good offense. Now what's interesting is how would that translate to the SEC? So that worries me a little, but it's not like the SEC plays great defense, but it's better than the Big 12. I see this kid second rounder. How about you?
It depends. So if you have like what we're talking about, 12 teams, you might be able to sneak them mid to late second. If there's a 14 team, you can kiss it goodbye. He'll be gone second because there's just not as many options. There's more teams. Like, for example, our Dynasty League is 14 teams. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I do not expect Jovantae Barnes to be sitting there in the third round unless, ours is supplemental too. So there's some nice ones on the waivers, and I'm not going to say it for strategy purposes. But there's some waivers out there for supplemental that I'm like, I might want to take my second, and I have traded my second away so I could, I made some moves and stuff like that. So it's either I have to trade to get another second back, whether that's trade with Jared or whatever the situation, or I'm going to have to wait and see because now I have 2/3, and now I'm like, well, one of these guys eventually might drop. I just don't see it being Jovantae Barnes, if I'm being honest with you, especially in a 14-teamer. 12 or 10,
I tell you, on that same note, then don't be afraid to zag when everybody's going to zig on Barnes. don't be afraid to zag on Sawchuck. Look, we're
Take him
still
under the
talking
bag.
about the kid, and he ain't even with the team.
I know,
He was
they're already
ranked
hyping him up.
7th in your – yeah, he's ranked 7th in the class anyway. He could fall. But for NFL purposes, he comes in at 5'11", a $185. He'll probably max out at 5'11" in that 199 range. And
Right,
as
200.
you've seen with most of the guys, if you don't weigh 200 pounds, you better be a stud athlete. And I don't know if Sawchuck is that guy or not. But for the NFL, Jovantae Barnes coming in at 200 pounds as a kid, freshman, well, that equates to
It's
a 220 kid. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yep. All right. So let's move on to our next one, and we're going to talk quarterback, and that is Mr. Taven Jackson, who's actually been talked about whether you're in C2C realms, you've heard of him maybe in practices, or you're just a local guy from Tennessee and you just heard the name. So Taven Jackson is a 4-star prospect. 24/7 Sports Grade has him at a 0.9182. He is 6'4", 195 pounds. He's the 13th overall quarterback in the 2022 class. Let's talk about his speed first. So Solving Football Analytics has him at 47.5 miles per hour. That is under the 50 mile per hour benchmark. Tag concerning, right? But we have some tangibles, and we'll talk about some positives about Tavin Jackson, and Mitch will kind of elaborate about how legs can help you out, especially in CFF. So let's look at the varsity total max preps. Total passing yards, 4,813. 47 touchdowns out of 547 passing attempts. He completed 329 of those. That's actually really great. So he did a pretty good job there. Another thing that's a tad concerning for me, passing yards per game is only 107, which either means they had a run first heavy offense or the production level wasn't quite to what they worked out. I'm not quite sure. I really didn't dig too deep on how they finished as far as overall as a high score or anything like that as well. 18 interceptions. So he didn't play like a whole lot of games from what I saw in there as well, probably because of COVID and then things like that particular. But 47 touchdowns over 18 ones, I could probably make that trade. But there's a reason for those interceptions, and we'll talk about the pass itself and things like that as well. So let's look at the scout report real quick, and then we'll kind of move on. He is an athletic passer with good physical traits. He has a height and body to fill in. So, 6'4" is great. You can see over the line. I'm not going to say Brock Osweiler again. Let's just go with the comparison. Jordan Love, who was at Utah State. You can see clearly over the line. He made passes when he needed to. Am I a fan of Jordan Love in Green Bay now? No, because he'll probably never play. Thank you, Aaron Rodgers. And that's on Green Bay. So sorry to the if the GMs happen to hear this by a random chance. So he can take off and make plays with his feet. This is where a dual threat is really good. And here's opportunity because we have Hendon Hooker for 1 year and 1 more year only. Joe Milton is still there, but he's a senior transfer. He's going to be gone out of the depth chart. So this is a wide open opportunity for Taven Jackson. He's a high volume type guy. So he's got a high ceiling. But we'll start with what you think first. But we'll start with this dude's windup is weird. So we'll just start with that. Let's talk about the pass, Mitch. What do you think?
All right. Look, there's so many red flags on this kid, and I just don't see it. Yeah. Okay. So when he throws the ball, he falls away. If you look at 6'4" and 6'5" guys, and I went back and looked at a bunch of guys. Jake Browning was a tall, lanky kid in college or in high school. He threw going forward. I looked at Kyle Allen, who I've never liked, but I thought physically as a high schooler, I looked at him. They look alike on the field. They don't throw alike. This kid doesn't throw well. Now, you can teach a kid mechanics. You can. And this kid has wheels. He can run it. He's even got juke. Yeah. Like, he's got juke.
He's got some moves.
For 6 foot. I was like, dang. He's 6'4" and keeps juking children. So what's going on? So I love his legs. And honestly, if he played in the MAC, I'd say, man, we got something, MAC a little attack. College. Dustin Crum. I looked up Dustin Crum in high school. Dustin Crum was better than him. He just was. Here's what jumps off the page. This kid didn't throw a lot of passes and threw 18 interceptions. I'll pass. There's, again, I don't have a list like everybody, like is C2C. He ain't the 13th quarterback in this class. He's not.
Yeah.
So, again, what's going to happen is Hendon Hooker's going to leave. They're going to do well. Josh Heupel is good with quarterbacks, and they're just going to get another move in.
Yeah,
they will.
Thinking,
they'll just get another
high transfer spot for sure. Because Tennessee's got the offense. I know they only have. They have Tillman and what's the other wide receiver? 2 more years maybe. So they
got weapons. They got weapons. Their running back is very good as well too. So no, this anyway. Y'all can someone else pick them. I'm not picking them. No. And in any league, okay. So you're the 13th quarterback. We're talking then 4th round selection.
Yeah.
No chance. I'll take a developmental style quarterback for the MAC. The kid from Western Michigan. I don't even know where he is on this list, but he's way better than this guy. It ain't close. So whatever that kid's name is, and I don't even know his name, but I watched him on video, and he's way better than this guy.
There you go.
So I'm off the train.
Now I'm going to have to find the Western Michigan and put him in the show. So that's going to happen in a future episode.
That kid looks good.
So do you think Tennessee can teach this kid the right way to throw the football?
Yes.
And
I
just don't see it like.
Okay, so look, you're not going to be 6'4" and 195 pounds at SEC Tennessee. So the kid's going to grow and be strong. And that 47.5 miles an hour is going to go up. And he ain't going to get slower. He's quick. And again, he runs athletically. Okay. But we don't live in that period anymore. You don't get to hang out at Tennessee until and transfer from a boy to a man. Right. This kid ain't going to start at Tennessee. He's just not. Now, again, this kid could develop and then go to Ohio, and I'd be like, sweet. All right, we got this little
some action with this kid. That'd be awesome.
Now he's 6'4", 220 pounds. The windows are a lot bigger, so he'll be up to 52 miles an hour then. And I would say, man, we might have something. Put him in with some receivers. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I feel you. Even the scouting report says, even with the opportunity, he might not start. Like I said, this could be an easy transfer in for one of these high-profile quarterbacks. They just, want to find a spot in the SEC. They want to make their name, go to the NFL. This is a great spot to do it. Taven Jackson, and we do hope, he does develop and things like that. So let's look at drafting. The kid, I would say 4th round if we're picking. I'd rather take a guy like Terrence Gibbs with the upside at Georgia Southern, even with, what I'm saying? Because I'm looking between production between the two. Even if he starts, it sounds like it's going to be maybe a rough going for the kid. It's a big jump. This is a big comparison between his high school and
I'm being
CFL.
serious. I would really like to read about this kid to see why they think he's 13th. Because it's
got to be the running.
It isn't production. It isn't production.
It's gotta be a dual threat.
But there are a lot of kids who can run. If you're drafting today and you're listening to me at all, pass. This kid doesn't. He doesn't pass well. You should.
A burn. You heard it here first from Mitch, the Hitman Hart, holding no punches, putting everyone in the shooting star press. I love it. All right. Let's move on to the Big Fish, Small Pond. This is Mitch's bread and butter that's now alive at the Future Freshman podcast. And we decided to go with one Jace Wilson. He is a 3-star prospect from 24/7 Sports, the grade of 0.8626. He's 6'4". He's 185 pounds. He is the 127th wide receiver. So we dug him deep out of the bin to talk about him today as well. However, let's look at some of the stuff that he's got going on. Total receiving yards, 947. Average receiving yards, 11.1. Catches, 85. Receiving yards per game, 39.5. Both that and the average, a little concerning. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Receiving touchdowns is 6, and he only played 24 games at a max or a prep school type situation. He was the 2020. He was the first team selection at wide receiver. He did help his high school Guyer to an 11-3 record to the semifinals. His brother is actually the forward of University of Kansas, and I actually have Kansas going far. I actually have them projected to win the tournament, so we'll see how Kansas does. But his brother plays forward there at Kansas University. So there's athleticism. He also played basketball, so he does have jumps. He has the height. So he's got height. He's got probably a good vertical jump, if we're being honest, right?
Did you look at his stats?
I did for a little bit, yeah. But the senior year, then we'll talk about that.
No, it's basketball stats.
Oh, no, I didn't get to see the basketball stats, just the football.
Yeah, not a rebounder. And that at 6'4", it was concerning. I rewatched his tape, and he does not body up like a 6'4" guy does. He actually plays smaller. Now, that's not that bad, except what I've already read is the kid is putting on weight. Now, again, I haven't seen pictures of him. Again, I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to continue to bring it up every time we talk. If you notice the picture of him, he also has skinny arms.
Yep.
So powerful, he can jump, but he doesn't use his body. So just nickel bet, knowing dynamics. And his brother pushed him around.
Yeah.
And
easily.
His brother is a man. He's a big guy. And he treated him like a small guy. So he's actually a big guy, 6'4", 185 pounds. Geez Louise.
Yeah,
but he plays small. So what I want to see is, can that staff at UTSA bring out the dog in him?
Exactly.
If they can bring out the dog in him, he could be something. Now, I want to share with you guys something else. The kid's shoulders are very round. And if you've been around athletes, what that means is you can put on a lot of weight, okay? This kid can put on weight. What I think he's going to turn up being is like a little tweener. I think he's going to be 6'4", 230 pounds.
Ooh.
And he's going to be an animal type of guy if they can bring out the animal in him. I just worry because he doesn't play like that. Averaging 11 yards a catch, that's not good.
No,
that's not good at all.
It is 39.5 receiving yards a game when the other guys we're looking at are 80, 90, sometimes over 100s in high school. It's high school.
And Denton Geyer's quarterback was good. Yeah. He's very highly touted as well. So you can't say, well, they leaned on the running game or whatever. So, yeah, Big Fish, Small Pond, definitely worth a watch. Certainly in redraft, no one you should redraft.
No redraft.
But yeah, you put him on your developmental squad. I mean, he comes to you at 6'4", 185. Not many kids do out of high school. So I'll give him a little props on his size, but he's got to play bigger. He plays smaller, and he ain't getting any smaller. He's only getting bigger. So you got to play big, boy.
Yep. So once what Mitch said, he is at UTSA. So he's at the Meat Meeps or the Roadrunners, whatever you like to say on there as well. Currently, of course, they have Frank Harris at quarterback. He will be gone by the time Jace Wilson ever sees the field. Zakaria Franklin is a junior, so he has this year. He's the protected wide receiver one. Him and Harris are a great duo when it comes to redraft, dynasty. If you got him in a keeper or anything like that. These are the guys that you look at in Conference USA because these are the kids that are playing Western Kentuckys of the world and Charlotte, the ones that are just there is no defense. There's only offense. It's pretty much the Maction, but with a little bit more competitive nature. I like to call it basically. No offense to the Maction. I love Maction on Tuesdays. That's where it's at.
There's a little more. It's a little more tackling. That's it.
Correct.
It's just there's
a few more tackles. And some of these Conference USA guys you wind up sometimes in the NFL. So, I mean, it's like you get some people that come out there that just makes a difference. So Zakaria Franklin's got it in the bag. There ain't no way Wilson's seeing the field. Cephas isn't bad either as a junior on that one. DeCoy and Clark is still there as junior. These guys are juniors, as you see. So they're still 1 year, maybe 2 years tops if they want to stick around. Of course, this is Frank Harris's last year. I didn't get a chance to see who's the upcoming Roadrunners quarterback. From what I hear, I think they're staying with a dual threat. They like the system there. So here's where the question is, Mitch. Does the system stay the same where maybe 2 years where Wilson, whether he moves to tight end and he's at 230 or he's at 215, maybe a little bit more bigger, but still kind of lean on that one. Now, does he become a red zone threat, kind of like the Franklin is currently right now, being the junior and the wide receiver one? Does Wilson ever have a shot at wide receiver one is basically what I'm
it could easily happen. I mean, you can see he had 6 touchdowns and 85 catches, and in high school, that's not bad. That's pretty good ratio. He could certainly do that. UTSA, though, it's not your older brother's UTSA. They are a lot better than they used to be. The kids that they're getting are a lot better. There's going to be a ton of competition. He just has to, play bigger and you got to be a dog, man. And what I saw in video was not a dog. What I hope to see in the future when they spotlight him is somebody who's getting after it in drills. And he is gonna have to, block and be at 6 foot. Kids, he already isn't 185. Yeah. I saw a week ago he's 6'4" and 195, and I've even seen him listed as 6'5". This is a lot of man. This is a lot of man. You got to be a man. Mm-hmm. And again, kid's young. He has an older brother who's a basketball player at an elite school. Yep. Like, I believe he got pushed around. And again, I don't know the kid from anything, but I'm a little brother and I know what it feels like to be one. I just think he plays small because his brother was big. And I hope they get that out of him.
And then, of course, I'm the bigger brother. I have a younger brother who now can whip my tail at any time in any place. So, I mean, there's the other spectrum, too, where maybe UTSA will bring out the fight in this kid. Yep. So we're going to see. So here's where the underlying thing is. You do not draft this kid in a freshman draft. It's just, I wouldn't, honestly. Maybe if you got 16 rounds, like some leagues do. If you got 16 rounds, shoot your shot. You know what I'm saying? Go for it. But if it's a solid 10 rounds or something like that, I'm not taking him. However, he is one to circle and pencil in as someone for a waiver wire pickup. He could be almost basically free. Maybe not after this. I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know if this podcast even moves up, stuff like that in particular. However, people are listening in, so they'll remember the name Jace Wilson. It's just you don't have to worry about the first, second round. They're not like these elite kids like an Evan Stewart that we talked about, where it's almost, you're going to gun for the kid. You want to have them on the squad, or, in redraft, you want to look at, spending your waiver wire on them. Jace Wilson is a guy that you could pick up for maybe for $1 or something like that.
I'm going to throw one thing in there for the folks that might be new to listening to a podcast about kids that don't play this year or, might not be impactful. Just think of a couple of years ago, we were doing this and we were talking about Smith and Jigba and saying, did you see him? Man, Friday night, he had 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, against that 6A champion team. And then when the opportunity came and you saw that he was in the lineup, you would say, well, I'm going to take a flyer on the guy right now. I've been hearing about this guy for 2 years. When you don't familiarize yourself with this and you see Franklin go down, or in 2 years, Cephas go down, and you see Jace Wilson trot on in the fourth quarter, he doesn't get any looks, and you're like, well, he's just some guy. Well, if you've been following these guys for years, you can see who is just a guy and who ain't. Right. That's what I think is important about scouting these kids early.
Absolutely. The only thing I'll say, other than that, is this is CFF, so we are looking at that, production and stuff like that. Just because the kid is at UTSA, the kid's he's got a shot. You know what I'm saying? It might be a long shot, but he's got a shot. And that's what you want to see. That's why a lot of people look for a lot of these kids in G5 or CFF, but Jace Wilson would not be a C2C guy. He would not be even Devi or anything like that. Maybe if he explodes and just has just one of those kids that comes out of nowhere and just gets better. But we are looking at a CFF perspective.
Definitely.
Just think about it. Like I said, if you pick them up, don't clog your rosters is what we're trying to get at. But at the same time, remember the name. Just write it down on possibles or possible pickups, things like that. That's what we're trying to say.
What's going to be cool with these broadcasts and podcasts, and when you look back, another guy who comes to mind is Ches Malusi and Brandon Allen.
Yep.
So Ches Malusi, he goes and people think he's going to be the guy, and he's not the guy. And we would have again been talking about, God, there's this big kid. Just think how much we would have been talking about Brandon Allen.
Yeah.
We'd have been like, my God, he's 240 pounds in 10th grade.
Holy cow.
And then we would have been able to say, you might want to watch out. The kid's 17 years old. He's one of the younger kids in college football. You might want to zag when everybody zigs. And if you hear me talking at all, a lot of times I zag. Everybody's on Eric Gray. is it really him? Is he any? Why don't the Kennedy Brooks is right there? Why is he better than him? So oftentimes, and what I like so far of what I've read on the Canvas to Canton site, there's not a lot of group think. You can get in an echo chamber in college fantasy football. I don't see that. And again, like I don't see it compared to even what I see with, the way a kid runs and I read and I was like, well, I didn't really see it that way, which is a good thing because you want varying opinions and you want to try to get as much information as you can. So it's you guys are doing great work.
I appreciate that. A common example, and you'll hear the podcast before you'll hear this one. We're going to do our summit rankings. Everyone's different. Nate is a systems guy. I'm an opportunity guy. You know what I'm saying? Like I look at the opportunity in the window. I also favor the younger players over that one because I'm looking at it in a dynasty perspective. However, for doing redraft, I'm completely different. I'm looking, pretty much who's the studs and who's made a clear claim at the starting lineup. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Whereas Nate is systems. Jared and Chris, Moxley, they think differently. You know what I'm saying? So it makes it really interesting to hear the different points of view. And that's what I mean, we talk about our buddy John Lobb, like he's an OG, been at it just as long, if not, as much as you have. He has a difference in opinion too. And then, you have the guys that are over at the CFF side. So Bainbridge, who's been doing it for a while. So has Joe. I mean, they have differences and stuff. That's the great thing about, CFF can kind of be echo chamber, but at least there's differences that you can do.
No, it is. And the reason that I bring it up is because the NFL is so commercialized that almost every list is the same. And college football on some lists get very similar. For instance, quarterbacks. Almost everybody has all the quarterbacks and they pick them in a row. The two positions that still ain't that way are running back and receiver. They vary wildly. Marvin Harrison being the 28th pick in a draft or the 56th pick because people are like, well, it's Ohio State. Anyway, it's good, but that's why it's going to be a super fun season. And this year among, not totally different than any year, but like once you get past the Ohio State guys that are the guys everyone's going to draft, those three, the triplets, Oklahoma has changed. Clemson has changed. Alabama's skill, besides Bryce Young, their skill set players are all going to be different. Every player is going to be different. Texas and Texas A&M, different. USC, different. Oregon, different. Nebraska, different coach. So this is going to be a year where you're going to get some guys that you like and say, all right, I got my guy. I got my guy. My guy fell to me. So it's going to be a fun year.
It is, and we can feel it, and I think Mitch can too, that you can feel the rise of CFF. Like I'm not saying it's going to be commercialized in like the next 2 years like NFL, but it is growing substantially. We're seeing guys like a Josh Pate from Last Kick and stuff like that. He's even been mentioned and talking about, all right, show me how to play CFF and I'll play it and then I'll get the word out. So I meant the guys like that are influencers in the college market. Now Herb Street's gone to Amazon to do NFL, but we still got other college guys that we can reach out to or mention in the comments and stuff like that, or just hold a sign like Jared and just tell people play CFF on the national scale. That's the way to do it.
I like it.
So, Mitch, I want to thank you for coming on, my good friend. It's always a blast to have you on and talk college football. Good for the people that you're going to hear, Mitch, and the CFU podcast that is coming out. Of course, the season, we're going to talk about prize picks, the ones earning some money, some DraftKings type situation. Of course, we're going to talk about players of the week, people you should have your eye on, just like you heard previously in the last season. So you'll see Mitch there. If you want him to have him back here on the show, just leave comments or just, message on us like, hey, this is a great episode. Please get Mitch back and I'll have him on in a flash. You just tell me when and where. Mitch, tell the people where they can find you and tell them about the cool best balls and things like that you got going on, man.
So, you can follow me on Twitter at AceHolesRules. And for anyone who's thinking about where did the name come from, the very first pro football fantasy draft that we ever did, it was in 1992. And we decided to do an auction like baseball because we had played fantasy baseball for 2 years. and everybody that I bid on, everybody bid them up. So every guy I got was just overpriced, and I was so mad. And I was like, "You guys are a bunch of ace-holes." And I was like, "That's going to be the name of my team from now on." So yeah, so that has been my team name. But yeah, I look forward to. I'm going to put out some of my list and drop them down for NFL and for college as well. This is a very open NFL rookie season. So also too. At the top, just a couple of guys who are consensus, Breece Hall and such, and then a long line of guys that are all in the mix. And I think this is going to be the year a skilled player can make up some ground in the NFL, and that's very difficult to do in the NFL echo chamber of fantasy football. This is the year to make some hay.
Absolutely. Once again, you can find him at Aceholes Rule on Twitter. Countless opportunities to watch. The good thing about Mitch, he'll leave best ball drafts. He'll leave you our redraft keeper. There's always something great, whether it's CFF or NFL.
And I always got to pick 12th.
That's weird.
Hell?
What's up with that?
Every time I get 12th, I hate the turn, but I'm getting better at it. So remember Chris Rodriguez in the fourth round. He keeps going in the fourth round to me. I keep picking him. So
he's aboard the Chris Rodriguez train. Choo choo.
I don't understand. He is the most popular 37th pick in the draft.
There you go.
That's awesome.
But please follow Mitch. Like I said, he does NFL, but CFF, he's a great follow. Please do that. I'm Brandon T. Sanders. You can find me at CFF University. Please follow us over at campus2canton.com. Like I said, they have multiple tiers there, but the NIL tier is where you can find every single guide. If not, the guide is $20 per one, so it actually is cheaper to do the yearly versus each and every guide, so please do that. Once again, shout out to Sick Edits HD from YouTube for the intro. I highly appreciate it. Be kind to one another. Have a great week, and we will see you next time. Peace.